straddle the table leg. The whole production.
Modem Futura episode. What episode is this? We must be getting close to 50.
This is 40. According to my notes, which doesn't count the trailer or anything like that.
Okay, yes.
This is 48.
Okay, we're getting there.
48.
Yes.
We're getting there. We're going to hit the big 5-0 before you know it.
Yeah.
And more excitingly, perhaps, is we're sort of fast approaching an 1-year anniversary.
Yes.
I'm
just
super,
a few weeks away.
Yeah, a few weeks away. I'm super excited about it. But then we'll have to do, I don't know yet. We'll have to do something
How
fun.
are we going to celebrate that? Yes.
I don't know.
Yep.
How does one celebrate with cake on a podcast?
Right.
Like,
yes.
we
can have our cake but not eat it.
That's right. Or maybe strangely and worse, we can record us eating cake in spatial 3D.
No.
That no one. Speaking of which,
yes.
I just recently saw there was an update to, like, ever so often on the Apple Vision Pro, they update the spatial gallery thing.
Yes.
Which I'm still trying to figure out how we get Modem Futura on there.
Yep.
But it was one of these things, and it was like a sushi bar type thing. And you come in, and it's right away I felt awkward as the viewer because there's no one in this place. So it was staged of some sort, right?
Yep.
And so they sit down, and of course they start doing the ceremony of preparing, the food or whatever.
Okay, right.
And then,
so it was like a proper sushi bar. It wasn't like sort of one of these sort of conveyor belt
No,
ones.
It was a legitimate
right.
like master sushi chef kind of situation.
Yep.
And I'm sure if I dug into it, it's probably like a famous one or something.
Right.
But clearly it was really gimmicky, because then they cut to like the plate that was like it was like -5, like it was like, it felt
right
like
in
it was,
your face.
the plate was like at your nose.
Right.
It felt like when you're watching this thing. But then they went, so then they come in and they drop like the single, it was like a sashimi thing or whatever. They pop it right there. It was too, like, the way it was lit, all these kind of things. I mean, I had a very negative reaction to it. And maybe it's just because I don't eat that kind of food anymore. When I was just looking, I was like, ugh.
It's not good. Right.
I'm like, it's just like, it's this fish flesh. Like, wow.
Right in your face.
Yeah.
Yes,
But I mean, it was very 3D.
Right. This is too real, this virtual reality.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was like, I know. We'll do celebratory cake that way.
There we are. And we should say, because most people listening to this won't actually have experienced the Apple sort of Vision Pro. This is their gallery where you can sort of watch, look at these sort of 3D stills, many of them taken on an iPhone actually, or these 3D videos. And it's kind of interesting of watching this stuff in immersive 3D.
The unanswered question is still, as I'm curious as to, like, how do they choose what goes on there?
Yeah,
because sometimes you can see
because we have some brilliant content,
amazing stuff. And not to disparage any content that's on there, but I look at some of it, I'm like, oh, come on, come on.
So one day, and I for people that haven't listened to every episode, we are recording every single episode in 3D in spatial video.
Yeah,
so
times
one day.
3.
Times 3, yes,
it's
with 3
90.
cameras. So
it's
one
27D.
One day, if you have an Apple Vision Pro, you will be able to put it on and actually feel as if you're sitting at the table with us.
Absolutely. And I'm excited for the upcoming so Apple's going to be releasing all these OS updates.
Yes.
And the one that'll be really nice is when it's all the 26, Mac OS, iOS 26, or whatever we're calling it, is also with that is supposed to be a much simpler way of embedding spatial content in web.
Right. So I'm already playing with that because I've got the beta to sort of see what you can do.
With it.
And actually, at the moment, it's not as good as you would imagine.
Yeah.
It's
I hope
a little bit quirky, and I'm not sure they're going to fix it for the full release. But we will be able to have web pages up where you can just click on the content and you'll see it in sort of spatial reality.
Yep, because honestly, that's one of the biggest challenges if you are in this ecosystem is how do you get your content to?
That's it.
Because you can do it the sneaker net version, which is like so also Blackmagic. Everyone knows Sean's favorite camera
is the $30,000 Blackmagic 3D camera. Yes.
If anyone out there, if you're listening, if you have one or know someone who can get us access, please, just for a week, let us borrow it.
Yep.
But because they've released, so Blackmagic has released their own sort of test video and project. So you basically, if you're like, I would like to play with one of these things, you can go to their website, download the test footage, and so you can start editing. They just have sample stuff. So, but it is massive. Like, if you work with video, very quickly you realize how big video files go from standard definition or even high definition of 1080p to 4K. And you're like, oh my goodness.
And then you got 3D, 4K.
Oh my goodness.
Immersive. Because that environment is not just 4K.
Yeah. And so what's cool right now is we are running these cameras. We have 3 of them running in spatial, but really it's still at 1080p resolution.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just using an extra eye, which is kind of an interesting piece set. Now I'm hoping, we're also 2 weeks away right now. So by the time this episode launches, it'll be real close to the Apple announcements for. Yes. And I'm, it's always like, what's going to be in the phone? What's going to be the phone? I'm really hoping to see something with more of the spatial. So 4K spatial or something like that would be super cool.
And again, for people that haven't experienced this, it is quite profound.
Yeah.
Putting that headset on and immersing yourself in these environments.
The best way I can explain it to people who have not had the opportunity is if you remember the Viewmasters. I still think this is the best comparison because those Viewmasters are very simplistic, right? Whether they're like, our kids have these ones that were from like the Natural History Museum or something. So it's like dinosaur skeletons.
I had my first one in the 70s.
Yeah. Well, I remember I had
amazing.
I had like Winnie the Pooh storybook ones and all this kind of stuff.
The Disney ones. Yeah.
And they're phenomenal. You look at these things. I mean, these sort of Viewmaster 3D, stereographic images are incredibly compelling.
Yep.
And it's a technology that's been around
This is technology. You take a sort of a $20 Viewmaster from the 1970s and 1980s and you replace it with a $3,500 to $4,000 headset.
Yeah, but now
you can make your own content.
And now you make your own content. And you can make your kid. You can watch your kids. So I mean, I was just because I was in the headset last night and looking at some stuff. Because again, I still would say it's still the best way to watch stuff.
Right.
I was watching. I'm finishing the Foundation series, and I'm like, it's just incredible to watch that. You have this floating screen,
big screen,
perfect. There's no glare on it. There's none of this stuff. But I was going back through some of my photos because I've gotten in the habit now too of I always go to the spatial and take spatial photos. Yep. And I'm just goofing around I took the kids to a restaurant or something and the pictures are so fun of like eating a big, like that, that image of just like a child stuffing their face with a cheeseburger and it's all coming out the other side. But watching that and having that in this like stereographic, this Viewmaster style is just incredibly fun.
It is amazing. And again, it's almost impossible to understand how amazing it is until you've experienced it. But then they've gone one better, and you won't have seen this yet because you haven't got the beta.
Yeah.
But you can now, in the Apple Vision Pro, take a 2D photo and press an AI button, and it creates a 3D representation of it. And in most cases, it's even better than the spatial photos taken on the iPhone.
Which is crazy.
It is amazingly good.
Yeah, because they have the original one that does it, which is okay.
Yes.
It works well.
The new one is vastly superior.
Yeah, because the original one, you can feel like you can almost tell what it's doing where it's like trying to decide foreground and then just popping it.
That's it, yes.
But like, I think I had one of, it was like a trolley car in Lisbon, right? And it did a good job of the car, but the problem is the window inside where you see the people all came with because it's flat, right?
Yes,
so it's like, well, just,
stuff gets a little weird.
Yeah, so it looks like almost like a diorama in that way instead. But to have it, but once you can kind of try to calculate that depth.
And what is clever with the new one is it does fill. So you've got this new generated 3D image, and as you move your head, the
parallax kind of like
the parallax kicks in and your view changes. So what was originally occluded now becomes visible, and the AI actually fills in what
the gaps.
Was actually invisible.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, because that's, so coming back to just even these, I'm pointing at the cameras. We need another one so I can show people the camera.
I know. Yes. Pan round. Yes.
But like, so one of the reasons it's able to do this in terms of like the camera capture is because it's literally using both lenses, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But those lenses are. I'm guessing, I don't know.
They're about 19 mil apart.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That is far from the actual sort of traditional. Yes. So what you want to get for having really compelling, those stereographic 3-dimensional viewed images is to mimic the ocular distance or the interocular distance between
your eyes,
human eyes, right? Yeah. Because that's where we get our stereo vision from, is the distance from our left eye to our right eye. Yeah. And if you position cameras to do that, you can get some really, we used to do this with still cameras. We used
so
to
this
set
is
up
where
these really fun,
you know, at one point you're going to have an iPhone where instead of having that little cluster of lenses, you're going to have lenses at either end of the iPhone.
Make it like a hammerhead shark, man.
Right.
Put them on the other end of that thing, and it would look goofy as hell. But the stereo images that would be phenomenal. Because it's trying to, and that's one thing that I'm curious about the AI, the machine learning conversion of that too, because it's then, you know, when you record that image, it's also capturing all the depth, all the things, but also it's capturing, you know, the interocular distance of those lenses. So it knows exactly how far apart they are.
Right.
And with that data, you can then start to calculate, well, let's move it to match more of this sort of standard human, adult human, you know, sort of interocular sort of range. And when you can do that, well, then you can start to really, I'm excited to see how that would really calculate those images to really kind of blast those
We'll
things.
see where it goes. Anyway, this has got a little geeky for a cold open.
Whoa, geez, surprise. So I think the segue here was, I'll come back to the Vision Pro as one of the best ways to watch movies. Because we'll take a quick break, and then I want to come back and I want to talk to you about a book that you wrote,
and
a class that you teach, and just amazing things around using films as a way in. All right, we'll be right back. All right. All right. Well, I am Sean Leahy, joined by my podcasting host extraordinaire.
I love the way you say that every week. Andrew Maynard, yes.
Hey, if you want it to be true, you just keep saying it, right?
Right. Like one day it will come true.
We are the number one podcast talking about the Apple Vision Pros and movies and technology and all that stuff. But that means this is, of course, Modem Futura, the show that explores the intersection of technology, society, and the possible, probable, and preferable futures, asking deep questions like, what does it mean to be human in the future? And I think that's a really good segue into talking about this little guy. Let me knock everything over here. Well, you'll notice I also brought one of my favorite books too,
I did. I was wondering which one you were going to go for then.
So we're going to set it up, but then we'll talk about this. Maybe I'll talk about that first. But first, so you wrote a book called Films from the Future, The Technology and Morality of Sci-Fi Movies, 2018, which is hard to believe that was 2018.
I know, it was a long time ago now, yes.
You know, but I think so you wrote a book, and then did the class exist before the book?
So the class sort of came about as I was writing the book. So the first time I taught the class, they were actually having first drafts of the chapters, and then the book came out after.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And so, and the course is titled, it's the same title, right?
No, the course is the title that I wanted the book to go out under, The Moviegoer's Guide to the Future, which my publisher didn't like. And I you know, Films from the Future is there. I still don't like it. And I think the trouble is nobody knows what that means. Whereas I love The Moviegoer's Guide to the Future.
You know, I would agree, because I think, you know, Films from the Future, it almost makes you think like this is something from the future coming back. I know, as opposed to,
and then the technology and morality of sci-fi movies.
You know, version 2.
I know,
the second release, right?
Maybe.
You know, Riz taught us you can do that, right? You can release, so hey, why not? Well, I think it's incredibly cool, because one of the things, and we'll dig into it here in a minute, but one thing for me, like when I read this book about a year and a half ago or something like that, when I came across it, was my initial reaction was, where was this book when I was 16, 16 years old, 18 years old, whatever, already digging into these things myself, but without any no structure, no guidance, no frameworks to be thinking about, you know, and it is an interesting thing. And it would be curious how much of this is just the generational element of when the space and place to which I grew up versus not having access to, you know, the types of communities and the types of things that we are able to find now through, you know, social media and internet communications and all these kind of things, was always kind of really sort of having these, you know, lost in your thoughts, chewing on these ideas and really bringing up a lot of, you know, even unknowingly, scratching the surface of so many deep philosophical components,
but not being able to engage with others,
not knowing the language, not knowing the background, not knowing the entire volumes of work.
I gotta say, just as an aside, this is one of the things where I think the internet has been transformative in a positive way, because I keep coming across people who have felt isolated because there's nobody in their immediate community that thinks like they do, that talks about things in the way they want to. But what the internet did all the way back to the 1990s with those sort of early Usenet groups and sort of building out from there, people could find others that saw the world in the same way and form those virtual communities in quite transformative ways.
And it's normally good. Maybe in some ways, maybe there is a benefit to keeping some people apart from each other.
But there are always downsides as well as upsides.
That's right.
But I find it exciting that sort of that kid who once was utterly isolated can now find other people around the world that think in the same way.
Yeah, and it's one of the, I think it was in my class we were talking about, and I think a comment had come up, and I think that the sentiment was, one of the great human tragedies is that our lifespans are not long enough to consume enough information, right? Like you can't read all the books.
Believe me, at my age, I'm feeling a little stuffed.
You're like, you know what? Actually, John,
it's coming out of the seams now.
You're like, actually, you know what, man? Just don't even waste your time. I've had my fill. We're good. But there's and I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I feel that way often when you discover things, when you're like, where has this been? Why, and maybe, in the grand scheme of things, hey, depending on what you believe in terms of deterministic versus, maybe you weren't meant to have it or you weren't ready for it until you came upon it.
But I don't know. But that's one of the beauties of the age we live in. And despite the fact that I'm stuffed, one of the things I love
keep reading
is having conversations with people where they'll say something or give me an insight into something or push me in a certain direction and a light bulb goes off.
Yep.
And I actually find this with my students, and it actually comes back to sort of this big initiative here, the Future Being Human Initiative, which is all about having these conversations.
Exactly. Yes.
The number of times I've sat down with somebody who's either a student or somebody who I really don't know, and we just started a conversation, and it has been incredibly generative. They've had an insight that has just switched something on in my brain. They've introduced me to something that I wasn't aware of before, and those are the points where I get really excited.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would say, this probably, we're not alone in this, of course, but I think one of the best personal benefits for teaching is that.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there's always the yes, of course, we're going to transfer knowledge and, prepare a new generation.
It's one of the little secrets of teaching, if you're a good teacher, learning from your students.
You learn.
And it's a two-way conversation.
I mean, it's one of those things where, and I'll say this very sort of just matter of factly right up front is I'm like, you guys in the class, like this class, there's a lot you can learn from me, but I learned I almost feel guilty. I learned so much from them. And they're always like, are you learning enough from me? Because I'm really learning.
Right.
But it's incredible to just drop these. And, you especially, I'm teaching a course right now that's sort of futures and strategic forecasting and strategic foresight sort of position. And it's interesting all of a sudden to see these light bulbs pop, but then to get that initial perspective and reaction that is not from like the typical, it's not the normal ones that you kind of get every time. And that is when it's so much fun because all of a sudden you're like, and now we're off and running.
Right.
And now
and it's new every time.
It's new every time. It's exciting. And it really lives in that space, which is incredibly cool. So, but I can't go far. This book is always near me. This is the medium is The Massage.
Yes.
I'll put a link to both books, of course, but I'll put a link in our show notes for this.
Which you might have mentioned occasionally on other episodes.
I have it all the time. And like the danger now is
you should say by...
Oh, yes, by Marshall McLuhan and Quentin Foray.
Yes.
So, and this particular book is a really fun one because it is not a traditional book. I mean, it is filled with lots of visuals and short, pithy quotes. And the idea is that this is a book that you can pick up. I mean, it's the subtitle of it is called An Inventory of Effects. And it really is a lot of these small sort of anecdotes and things that are tied to the larger connection of the work of the medium is the message.
Right, yes.
So going back. But the reason I brought it is because when we were talking about, doing this episode where we kind of investigate films from the future and the class and all that kind of stuff. I think the reason I brought it, and I even flagged a couple pieces here, right, is to just remind people about the power of media.
Yes.
Because I think that is one of the things that I'm really interested to hear also, like how you initially approach it, but then how the class tackles this is because, for most people, right, especially I would say earlier on in their lives, usually the first place that they will have exposure to concepts like genetic cloning, artificial intelligence, time and space travel, fanciful things or that are grounded in real technology, but had blown out with science fiction is usually through media. It's through TV shows, it's through books, it's through and so as soon as you have that, you're like, time for a quote.
Go for it.
So let me read this real quick, and it's just. Again, I think if you have listened to every episode, I think I may have even read this exact quote before. I'm not sure. But it's in reference to media, that all media work us over completely. They are so pervasive in their personal, political, economic, aesthetic, psychological, moral, ethical, and social consequences that they leave no part of us untouched, unaffected, unaltered. The medium is the massage. Any understanding of social and cultural change is impossible without a knowledge of the way media work as environments. And then this last little bit here is a statement that all media are extensions of some human faculty, psychic or physical, right? And I think that's a very powerful piece to frame the way that, as we think about the role of, moving beyond the very surface level of media, film, TV, as a consumption medium, or that it's the message, it's the individual show or movie.
But it does actually mold us.
That's right. And it's the power of the ability to have these things, which is the incredibly awesome human power to understand, both for good and for concern. Right.
And that actually feeds right into this. So one of the reasons we're talking about the book is that I had my first class of this semester in the Moviegoer's Guide to the Future. So it ties in. But two things that I tell my students when we start. One is this is a movie class that's not about movies. So it's as much about the medium.
Do people groan? Do they go, oh, man?
Well, actually, no, because one of the other secrets of the course is even though it's not about a course about movies, we watch a full movie in class every week.
That's great.
This is nothing to do with clips, nothing to do with boring esoteric movies. We watch a Hollywood blockbuster every week from beginning to end.
That's awesome.
But that's just the start. That this is, in a very real sense, the medium that begins to sort of mold our thinking, our conversation, our insights. And then the second thing I'd say, which is very relevant to this is all about the power of storytelling. And of course, sort of storytelling and the medium go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Because without the medium, you can't have that flow of stories and narrative. And I make the point that as humans, as an evolved being and species, we have evolved through the power of stories, and we use stories to understand ourselves. The stories we tell ourselves actually form how we understand who we are and our place in the world. Our stories inform our understanding of our connection with that world, our connection with others, and they inform the flow of information between us. And so there you begin to see this really powerful intersection between the medium and the stories we tell. And movies, of course, are a really powerful instantiation of that.
Yeah, I was smiling because you basically just said this. Right. So just to layer on that, right? So again, coming back to this, the power of this medium and the power of storytelling. Right, that media, by altering our environment, evoke in us unique ratios of sense perceptions. The extension of any one sense alters the way we think and act and the way we perceive the world. When those ratios change, I'll paraphrase here because it says men change. I say we change.
Right.
It's incredibly powerful. So, by having the power of that medium, the power of that storytelling allows us to essentially see the world in a completely different way at times, or to be able to change the way that we see things by opening us up to these new ideas, new perceptions, new ways of self even, right?
That's it. And it is incredibly powerful as soon as you begin to tap into that. And of course, part of that as well is the communal experience. So with movies, you can watch them in multiple ways. You can just passively watch them and enjoy them as entertainment and not engage thinking or reason in any way, and that's fine. It's
Sure.
just entertainment. Or you can actively engage in them, you can actually enjoy them, but you can begin sort of thinking about them and allow them to sort of become part of your full experience. You can do that on your own, or you can do it with other people.
Yeah.
And this is why people go to the cinema together, because there is something fundamentally different about experiencing a movie with a crowd of people in real time as opposed to experiencing it on yourself, even if it's those just subtle social signals, the sort of the laughs, the groans, the sort of quite sobbing in the corner, the person on their phone, the kids in front of you. It all adds to the experience. And this is exactly why we watch these as a class in real time, because there's something you get from doing that you just can't experience otherwise.
Yeah. I would be curious. I mean, this isn't necessarily related to the course itself, but maybe even more broad. I mean, especially ever since the COVID pandemic, where there's been a massive sort of withdrawal from the traditional sort of movie, going out to the movies, going out.
I know they're all sitting at home with their Apple Vision Pros.
I
like
know.
you.
I'm like, I'm never going to the movie theater again, man. I think I shared the last time I went, and this kid was just driving me nuts.
Yeah, I know.
Next to me the whole time, and I'm just.
But it's part of the experience. It's the medium.
That's right. I'm like, you can keep that message, my friend. I'm right. The whole time I'm sitting there going, if I just watch this in my Vision Pro, there'd be no one here to bug me.
Right.
No, but I do wonder though. Again, there's this other piece that's just kind of sticking in my brain at the moment. Whereas like you can definitely see, especially in a controlled environment, right? You can see the value of having some of these shared experiences because you watch these things, and depending on the film, we know, right? You know if you're out there, if you're a crier,
right.
If you're one of those people who's like, just so beautiful.
Yep.
But you watch these movies, and the good films will have these incredible way of evoking emotion.
Yes.
All of them, right?
Yep.
And in some good movies, you go on a roller coaster, right? You're taken
through,
sometimes you go through the ringer on these things. But there is this, I can see this very valuable communal sense of in a controlled environment where you're watching people who are likewise interested to watch the film, to absorb the film.
Yes.
Not just to watch it necessarily
that's
passively.
Right. Yes.
And I think, but there's that, when you go into the public, when you go to like the 3 o'clock showing of Superman, or whatever, it's like.
But I can tell you just on that point. So the day that this episode will broadcast, we are watching one of my favorite movies, which is a British movie of Ishiko Kazura's book. I probably just I mangled the name. Never Let Me Go.
Never Let Me Go. 2010.
Yes. And it is a heartrending movie. I am in floods of tear every time I watch it, and every time I show it in class, you can hear the quiet sort of sobs from different parts of the room. It in some ways is quite traumatic, but that in itself changes the whole experience.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and that's an interesting film too. So like, let's talk about that one for a second.
Yes,
because that's not a film that I was like intimately familiar. And when I read
it's not an obvious science fiction.
No, and when you read the synopsis of it, I was like, this also reminds me of like The Island.
It is, but
totally different,
smarter.
right?
Yes.
Well, that was that's kind of a fun,
right.
As a fun. But the premise is somewhat similar, right? Of clones.
It is, and Kazuo Ishiguro, who I mangled his name of earlier.
Hey man, I'm just glad it wasn't me this time.
right. I know. This is where we need AI to go back and scrub. But this is the book is amazing, but it's a book that was never intended to either be about a sort of a sci-fi future. It's actually set in alternative reality, but it was a book that was written to try and understand the nature of a life well lived, even if it's a short life. So he basically set out to say, what happens if you have a very short life? What is the meaning of that life? Yeah. And the artificial construct he created was this idea of young kids that are clones that are grown to be organ donors, and they know this. Everything about the society, the school they're in, is geared towards them understanding that and realizing that this is their lot in life.
That's heavy.
It is really heavy how it plays out, but this is the beauty of it in a course, because it raises so many questions for deep conversation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is so subtly done that it just destroys you.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, that alone is like, I mean, I'm thinking of like The Island, where it's like, at least they tried to pretend like you want a vacation to some like this island paradise before they harvest your organs.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's quite brutal when you think about, again, when it's like the realization of, you know, you have this limited or whatever, like the clock is ticking, so to speak, but what to do with that?
That's right. And in the movie, you've got everything from
is that a gift or a curse to know how much time you have?
That's right. And you got some of I mean, I'm trying not to give away too many spoilers, but we got some of these young people who sort of accept it. They sort of say, this is my purpose in life, to donate 3 or 4 times and then to die on the operating theater, in the operating theater, and they're happy with that. Others really push against it. But one of the things that fascinates me, and this always comes up in class, so you watch the movie, and most of these kids, these young people, are rather passive with this. In fact, they're all passive and accepting. And almost always I have some student that puts their hand up and says, utterly unrealistic. They say in real life there would be a rebellion. They would push against this. They would escape the system. Apart from the fact that happens in Hollywood movies, in real life it absolutely does not happen. In virtually every case where people, if you look from the outside, it looks like people are being oppressed. Most people just put up with it and accept it. And that then is an incredibly powerful message. Yeah.
When it starts to, I mean, you start triggering all kinds of historical lessons. I mean, I don't know how deep you have time to go into those, especially if they're already crying, right? You're like, and we have a long list of human atrocities we can explore to give evidence to the fact that that's exactly what does happen over time. That's
exactly it, yes.
Where, you know, and I think that's one of these dark sides of the human condition is this long history of one group subjugating another.
And we're conditioned just to accept it and live with it until something very specific happens and it breaks that. But in most cases, people just go with the flow.
Yeah. And it's terrifying. Well, and you can also see some of the, you know, again, the way that the media influences us and how we do this.
Right.
Right. You can also see how this comes all the way back around when you talk about like, you know, out there sci-fi stuff with like aliens and all this hypothetical stuff of that. It's that same treatment done to us as we've done to ourselves. And I mean, you know, why is our first concern with extraterrestrial life in sci-fi always they're going to conquest and destroy and take our water and all this kind of stuff?
Yes.
It's like, because that is a reflection of ourselves and what we have done historically, time and time and time, and culture and culture and culture.
That is also so critical to the book and the class. The fact that you look at sci-fi movies, they are a deep reflection on society and how we think. They are a mirror to ourselves in many ways. And just putting aside the science, I mean, the point of a science fiction movie is not to get the science accurate. No. It's to tell a story that reveals something about us to us. And in that, they are these really deep mirrors.
Yeah. And worst movie going experience ever is to sit with a pedant who's like, no, actually, that's not how it works. The worst for me, I can't stomach it when it's like there's anytime like a computer hacker type thing, and they're just like hacked it, enhanced. I'm like, oh my God, like I know it. I got to suspend reality.
You know, it takes 6 months in real life, not 2 seconds.
They're like, and just the things they do, they just make it up half the time. They're just making up, you know, words, and they're like,
so this is a digression. I've got to tell you this. So a couple of things about the course. One is these are all fun movies. They're all chosen primarily because they're movies that I enjoy watching. Yeah. So there's nothing too serious here. And there are some movies that are just ridiculous movies. But I have my sort of threshold. So I will tell my student that there are one or two movies that I just cannot stomach. And one of them I'm going to put myself out there, and we're going to get hate mail for this.
I want to do it because I want to see how I react to this movie too.
It's the Scarlett Johansson film Lucy.
That's the one where she wait. This is the one where she becomes so smart she can change the color of her hair with her brain.
That's right. Yeah. So
terrible movie.
Basically, it's a movie that's based on the premise that
love ScarJo.
I know. But this movie, and it's actually hard to explain why I dislike it so much, because I love movies that go into fantasy land.
Yeah.
But it's a movie that starts from the premise that we only use 20% of our brain, which is actually wrong. We use 100%, but many people still believe we use 20%. But
let's go to if they ever do a screening, we're going and we're going to be in the back going false.
I know, right? But here's where it gets ridiculous. The second premise is that if you could expand our use of our brain from 20% to 100%, that's just increasing it by 80%. You can go from being a normal human being to being able to change the nature of the whole universe by your superhuman powers.
Yeah.
How you do that with an 80% increase, an increase from 20% to 80% to 100%, I have no idea whatsoever.
Someone did not learn their maths in school.
I know.
And thought it was like logarithmic. Right. And they're like, oh, every time you go up, it's doubling. It's like, no. This isn't the decibel scale. This is
like sort of okay, you earn $100,000 a year at the moment. Say you sort of expand that to earning $500,000 a year. Does that make you a gazillionaire?
In my mind,
right.
No, let's. All right, I'm going to make that promise now, and that if there is ever a theatrical showing of this in the Phoenix area, we will go and be those annoying pedants in the back saying,
"Yeah, no, like, that would just be cruel."
Oh, yeah, but funny. I don't know. I think that, and you know what? And maybe we could change some lives.
Maybe,
yes. No, but that movie, I always thought too. It was like, it's over the line of ridiculousness, which again, you can enjoy some of the scenes of like, oh, that was cool. That was clever. There's some fun action.
And there are going to be people out there that just love it, which
is
fine.
Sure. Yes. Right. And I think I remember, I come back. I remember, Taryn had held our feet to this when we were bashing on some movie. And it was the reminder that no matter how much you may think the movie is not good or you didn't like it, these are all pieces of art that have had. I mean, look at the credit. Next time you go to
look at the credits. See how many people have been involved.
Yes, and not everything is going to have the same impact, the same level. It's not meant to. All that kind of stuff. And even if it's something that you're like, well, I'll never watch that again. There's still a level of appreciation for the amount of effort and work that people put into it just to make it, even if it's considered a lower level film or it doesn't get good ratings or any of that kind of stuff.
And just to sort of emphasize that, this is where I'm so pleased I don't have people criticizing everything that I do and write, because I've got some Lucy's in my own output.
We all do, right? We all do. And even like films, right? You're like, well, I enjoy some films that have got downright awful ratings. One of my all-time favorites, I'll just put it out there, Dumb and Dumber. Absolutely love that film. Can probably recite it almost word for word, and get into some really funny but awkward and sort of foolish conversations when someone else is like that.
But that's another really important thing here. Sometimes I feel sort of living in academic circles and intellectual circles, there's this feeling that everything you do has got to be intellectual. And certainly I have colleagues that will look down their nose at something that they consider to be sort of pop culture.
Boo.
Very, very dangerous to do, because it's all about sort of how you engage with something. It can be the silliest thing ever.
You buy them this book and you say, you're missing out. You're missing out, my friend.
Absolutely.
You've missed it.
Yep,
in fact,
absolutely. So you look at movies, and to my mind, if somebody is sucked into a movie, they're having a visceral, emotional experience, even if you fundamentally do not like that movie, there is something powerful there.
Absolutely. And it's not the topic of today, but also, I mean, I would extend that in today to also video games. Right.
Yes,
that there's, I mean, again, people, the quick dismissal of a video game as being trivial and for children and for whatever. I'm like, then that tells me right off the, the end of that sentence or that dismissal that you've missed it. You don't even
really
understand.
Do not understand.
You don't understand the power. You don't understand the craft. You don't understand the art. You don't understand the work. And that's just a shame, because you're also I mean, from a futures perspective, right? I get my hackles up because I'm like, you've just militated an entire branch.
And you're isolating yourself from the vast number of people out there that are engaging in these things.
And also, and even furthermore, distant. I mean, that's why we do a podcast like this.
Right.
You're furthering yourself from being able to communicate and talk to people in a way that is like, it's content in a way, in an approach that actually makes sense. Right. Where you can have conversation.
I know. Yep.
Those people tell me, go put it in a book. Go somewhere else.
And I don't know where you're going to take the conversation.
I'm all spicy now.
but actually, as you go through the book and you go through the course, we have some movies that are definitely in that sort of lowbrow category, which I think are fantastic.
Absolutely. But so I'm looking. I'm instead of flipping through this, I've got the list in front of me here too. Some absolute hallmarks.
Yep.
Do you watch I'm curious, do you go in order when in the class? Do you go in order of the book?
Okay. We do, because there's a very, very specific purpose to that order in terms of the story.
Watching, kind of stepping them through. So, but of course, I mean, even on our podcast alone, the number of times we've referenced Jurassic Park as the book and the film.
Of course, and I've got to tell you that, I'm going to interrupt you at every point with this. So Jurassic Park, I mean, I've watched it so many times now, and I love the original 1993 movie. At the beginning of every class, I go through the movies and ask the students, what are they most looking forward to watching? What are they least looking forward to? And usually Jurassic Park comes up in their least looking forward to.
Really?
And definitely, just this last week, we did this. And this was the movie that they said, it's old, I've seen it, boring, don't want to see it again.
Boring.
And I try and convince them when we actually watch it that it's worthwhile watching. And usually many of them do.
Yeah.
Because you look at it from every aspect, from the art of movie making, the art of storytelling, the art of bringing in socially sort of deep questions into a Hollywood type sort of environment. It is exceptionally good.
It is. I mean, we've had a quasi love letter to Jurassic Park before.
I know,
but I would come back. It's worth again because also even like as a follow-up, like I would get excited to be like, and also share with them like the ILM documentary, and there's so many amazing documentaries.
See, this is where you get all intellectual about it. They just want to chill and sort of eat popcorn and watch a movie.
Don't you want to see how they came up with that? Because it was also, I mean, from a, and I would be just knowing the age of the students that are in the undergraduate programs today. I'm like, the majority of their exposure to the Jurassic Park franchise is probably all the terrible horror movie. And I say terrible.
Again, remember, there's no such a thing as a bad movie. No, but yes.
I think that's a terrible, in comparison, because I'm like, dinosaurs are scary as hell. You don't need to invent them in the lab to make them extra. They don't need to glow in the dark to be scary or whatever. I don't know. But that one's cool. But another one, so I want to talk about this because this is another. I think there's two of them that I like. I like that they're one right after the next. One is, so we already talked about Never Let Me Go.
Yes.
But then you followed up with Minority Report.
Yes.
Which that has been, I mean, originally Philip K. Dick short story.
Yep.
And that story has been used even just contemporarily for the last 10, 15 years as the vision of how we would interact with stuff, the precognition of what does it mean to be able to essentially have this ability for, the concept of precognition.
Right. And be able to predict the future. And the premise of it, for anybody that hasn't seen it, is the idea that you've got these precogs, and they're sort of genetically modified and flawed humans that have this ability to sort of pre-see murders. Right. And then this whole sort of police force is built up around this so that when the signal comes in that there's a murder going to be committed, they can go out and prevent it. And of course, the actual technology of this genetic modification doesn't make any sense. But the interesting thing is this idea of a technology that predicts crimes so we can intervene beforehand, that is very, very real. And you've got companies like Palantir, for instance, now a global company that are very actively developing and deploying technologies that claim to do this. So it's very, very sort of topical. But also, as you said, this is a film that is renowned for how both technologists and futurists came together to inform it, with Steven Spielberg pulling them together to ask them, what should we put in this film? And then the film flipping and technologists looking at the film thinking, we've got to make that.
And now going, we need to prevent this from happening.
Right.
But I mean, it's such a relevant film in that sense where, you have, and even from, again, we were just talking when we at the cold open about the Apple Vision Pro.
Yes.
And using things like hand gestures to control data and things like that, which is envisioned in that film.
There's these famous,
there's even animated GIFs, of course, of Tom Cruise, doing like the hand swipey thing.
Yeah, with the music in the background.
But there is this, even that has been something that has sort of seeped in and through this machine of thinking about different ways to interact with information.
That's right.
Which is interesting and compelling. And now, again, going back to the Vision Pro, being able to interact by looking at things and doing hand gestures without having to do.
It is quite incredible when you begin to look at the similarities between that movie and what we now beginning to do.
Because we were originally, it started with like touch, right? Being able to manipulate things and now being able to do that in a more of like a visual space. And it's really interesting. I hadn't thought about this, and this is why these movies are so exciting. Again, anybody who's watched this will know that there are scenes where you got 3D projections of 2D movies. Yeah.
And those are getting remarkably close to what you're seeing in the Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah, live in the future, man. It's crazy. But it also, I think the piece here, coming back to the Palantir component, as technologies have advanced over the last, I was thinking about this too. It wasn't recent. It was 10 years ago, somewhere in there was I remember there was a 99% Invisible podcast episode that was focused on this technology that they were using, that they had sort of deployed it in conflict zones. And it kind of fell off the map, which to me means it's been absorbed.
Somebody's using it somewhere. Yeah.
And what it was essentially they would load up aircraft with these, very high def like cameras, and would circle a city basically. So you can think of like drone or actual aircraft with these cameras. And the idea was, if something happened, these planes have been up there for a long time. So let's say there was an accident or something, right? That they could zoom and they could rewind, say there was an accident at this corner and this corner. They rewind the tape, right? Or tape. They rewind the video.
Yes.
And they're like, they can see it, but now those planes have been up there this whole time. So now you can fast forward and see, and so then you can also reverse that and go, okay, so the incident happened here. Where did those people come from? Keep going backwards. And you can basically but being able to do that with the compute power to basically sift through however long ago, all the way up to near absolute real time to see where people came and where they're going. And now use that information to do what you need to do, whether that's, law enforcement or first responders or whatever. But then all of a sudden it was like this test project, and then they were like, and it kind of went away. But I'm like, but did it?
But where?
Right? Yes, it went somewhere.
And of course, if you look at what companies like Palantir and others are doing, it is very, very similar. It is asking sort of how can we use data and AI to get a much better handle on what is happening, what is likely to happen, and where the intervention points are, whether that's preventing crime or whether it's doing something a little bit more nefarious.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And of course, this is exactly the core of the course. The movie is there to be enjoyed, but it's the conversations around things like this that it stimulates.
Yeah.
Where the power lies. And what we find is, we'll watch the movie, we'll have only about 20 minutes or so class conversation, but those conversations carry on. The number of students that come back and tell me that carried on talking about it over dinner with their friends at the bar, wherever, because they just couldn't get these new ideas out of their head.
And that's what's so powerful about using. That's what I love about this idea too, right? Is leveraging using this medium to have these conversations, to explore the way that this media is working you over.
See, that's
right.
It. Yes,
it's inescapable.
Gets in your head.
It's inescapable, and then having the controlled environment to explore, to tease these out, right? Because otherwise there's that danger of you're that isolated person who goes and you're like, wow, the first time I saw the movie The Matrix, I walked out of that. I didn't know, because this is before, it was like 99, right? So it was before the prevalence of spoilers online and all this kind of stuff. And I just remember, you'd see trailers on TV or wherever, and you're like, it looks like an action movie. I don't know. We'll go see Keanu Reeves do his thing.
Your mind was blown. You started doubting everything around you.
Melted. I walked out of there and I was just like, is any of this real?
Right.
But then instantly again, but having no context or no framing to be able to explore those in a way that wasn't just some like high school kid being like, wow,
right. You're isolated.
Yeah, fantastic. And I realize that we're never going to get through all these movies, but that's okay. Also, Limitless, there's a fun one.
Oh, yeah.
Pop a pill, get smart.
That's probably one of the lightest ones.
Bradley Cooper, right?
It's a fun movie. It's a little gory towards the end. It's a well-made movie. But of course, it raises all these questions about human enhancement. If you could take a pill that made you, a pill that made you super smart.
You could write a bill to allow you to take the pill.
That's right. Would you?
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful movie because it's utterly amoral.
Yes.
I mean, it does have some very serious flaws, especially with the sort of the gender balance and things. But this question of, is it good or bad to enhance your intelligence by taking a pill and then using that for personal gain? The film leaves it totally open-ended.
Yeah, and what I love about that film too is it again, it sets up an opportunity to also talk about unintended consequences.
Right. Absolutely.
So you're like, so wouldn't it? Because you might say, oh yeah, well, wouldn't it be great? Yeah, we'll all get smarter. Boop, you take the pill, but is there a danger in becoming too smart? Like,
right, yeah.
You become the worst person to go to a movie with.
And I've got to tell you something else here. So many sort of tangents here, but the way these movies were selected, it was very, very purposeful, specific process with many different layers. But one of the things I was looking for, I did not want movies that preached or moralized.
Yes.
I wanted enough flexibility there for us to explore these issues from our own perspective. So even though some of them are written with something specific in mind, so Jurassic Park, clearly Michael Crichton writing the original book, he had a very specific viewpoint of the idea of corporations and science. But even so, the movie doesn't moralize to the extent that you're locked into a certain way of thinking. Yeah. That to me was incredibly important because that opens up the playground to being able to play with ideas rather than constraining you.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's hard to stay away from Jurassic Park.
Right.
But even coming back to that, right, it doesn't moralize that it puts a cautionary tale on it.
That's right.
But it doesn't say you shouldn't do it.
That's exactly
right.
It
doesn't say you can't do this or shouldn't. It's just be careful. Because
yes.
What could go wrong?
Right. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah.
That's how these things work. One little mistake here, one little careless thing there. Next thing you know, you've got T-Rexes eating people, off the street.
Yes. Yeah.
But what I also just last thing on Limitless too, is it raises the same. When I think about it now, interesting because I haven't seen this movie probably since it came out.
Right.
But thinking about it now also starts triggering this similarity between the use of AI tools.
Absolutely.
Right. So if it's a pill,
I'm gonna fold that into the class in a couple of weeks. I hadn't thought of that yet.
Do so because here would be the question, right?
Yep.
Is if taking a pill, would that be? Is that we'll frame it in an educational setting? Yep. Would it be cheating to take a pill?
Yep.
And then do your schools, right?
Yep.
And excel artificially.
Yep.
Is that the same as leveraging an AI tool?
And so this is so good. This is why these podcasts are generative and transformative, because
we just cracked it open. There's a new one.
The conversation we always have is it appropriate? Is it ethical to take that pill? Is it ethical to take it, say, if you're an airline pilot and it gives you an edge with your job? Is it ethical if you're a concert musician and it makes you better than other concert musicians? Is it okay if you're a scientist and it allows you to discover more? And we discover that in many cases, the students in the class, and actually there have been surveys on this, say, actually, it's okay. It's a good thing if somebody is able to enhance their abilities, if that actually sort of benefits the people around them. But even though we talk about this in the context of pills, of therapeutics, and pharmaceuticals, you're exactly right. You can extend that exactly to where we are now with AI. Yeah,
absolutely. And for me, what it triggers also is this, there's a, even going back to just like smartphones, right? Or these smart computing devices that we can keep, on hand, is sort of this conversation between extending the mind versus an extension of the mind.
Right. Yes.
Right. So something that is internal that you're able to do versus something that's external, but you're off. And we do this. And the classic example, right, is even with something as now ubiquitous as a cell phone, is that, how many phone numbers do you remember anymore? You've offloaded that cognitive process to this phone, or if you're one of those people who can't get anywhere without using Google Maps or something, it's like you've offloaded that cognitive process.
See, that's right.
Outside. Is that, where's the judgment on that? And then moving into this AI. I mean, who knew?
So this is why Limitless is a movie of our time.
And who knew Limitless in 2011 was an AI movie?
See, that's exactly it. And so there's another small story that I've got to tell about this film, which I actually put in the book. So when I was writing the chapter on Limitless, which of course is about taking these pills to just give you incredible clarity with how you think, I was suffering from unbelievable brain fog. I could hardly put two words together. And I ended up writing about this. I basically said, as I'm writing about this, I desperately feel I need these pills to sort of clear the fog away.
Jeez,
But the funny thing is, it ended up being a really good piece of writing, even though I was struggling to squeeze out every word in that.
Oh, that's what's the I'm gonna embarrass this because this is like a junior high school book. Flowers for Algernon.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it. Yes,
that's the one where
sounds about
a kid who is very low on the intellectual spectrum is like given treatments, and he goes, that's probably gonna embarrass myself here because I'm probably like, it's the wrong one.
You're hallucinating.
There's some book about that where this
AI
kid becomes,
Sean is making stuff up at this point.
He's hallucinating. Just unplug him. Right. I'm gonna have to look that up real quick because I'm like, I probably just embarrassed, and probably to the chagrin of every, like, I can't believe you got that wrong. Yes. Well, I'll look it up here in a minute, but other books or books,
movies,
movies, Elysium, phenomenal. Also,
really serious.
I loved it. Speaking of my Geiger counter, I should have brought that because that's in the movie. That's that big piece. The guy goes into the
radiation poisoning,
and that's the whole impetus of that character needing to get up to the ring or whatever it's called.
That's right. Yes.
But Elysium, I loved. That was a movie. I still remember the emotional affect that had of this righteousness, right? Of like everything should be equal.
Yes.
Because how dare you?
Right. Yes.
This naive, I come out of the theater, I'm like, I know. It all needs to be available.
But it's also an interesting story in the movie because the main protagonist, he's not actually interested in other people. He wants to save his own life. Yeah. Very, very selfish.
Yep.
Until I'm going to not give anything away. But
these are like 15-year-old movies.
I know, but the resounding message is not the selfishness, even though that is the vehicle that is used through the movie. It's actually quite a clever piece of storytelling.
It is, yes. and I really, I mean, it had an effect. It really hit when I remember seeing that. Because it's and of course, 2013, it's this really kind of weird, interesting time, when that kind of came out. But also, I mean, again, just we deal with this constantly right now with anytime we have these advanced movements in innovation and disruption is how are they distributed, right? I mean, that's that right, William Gibson quote of, the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed.
Right. Who gets to benefit and who doesn't.
Right. It's and sadly, the answer to that is a very simple one, right? It's an age-old solution to that. It's the most privileged, it's the most wealthy, both in terms of, individuals, but also in regions.
And the movie captures that so well. And again, it's a very, very serious movie. It takes itself very, very seriously. Yep. But the message comes through.
And very interesting. And, and you can see what's also, I think, interesting about not just Elysium, but a lot of these that a lot of stories, sci-fi stories in general, but even a lot of the ones that you've picked here, you can see that a lot of these are the same films that have heavily influenced a lot of tech founders.
Right.
And, people that, that are at the top of the list. I mean, the Sam Altmans, the Elon Musk, the Bill Gates, whoever, they're oftentimes they'll make a reference to things or elements out of a lot of some of these types of movies or, but and also, I mean, again, if you're living in, the modern society, I mean, just access to healthcare falls right into this Elysium sort of trap of who gets the fancy CT scan that can save your life and who gets a Band-Aid.
And of course, one of the things that I typically ask my students when watching Elysium is we watch this movie where there is such a stark difference between the wealthy people living on this very opulent space station, and then everybody else living on Earth in what are effectively slums. And I ask themselves, is this realistic? I ask them, is this realistic? And the number of students say, no, absolutely not realistic. If that happened in the real world, somebody would do something about it, would equal things out. Yeah. At which point I point out, where do your clothes come from? How does the world work at the moment? Are there any communities that are living like this? And of course, the reality is that the world we live in is far starker than even on Elysium in terms of those disparities.
Yeah. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, I think there's a scene in that movie that I'm trying to recall where the main character played by Matt Damon, right, is in this poverty-stricken area, and things are kind of, they're making, it's still life's still happening. But then there's this moment where he looks up to the Elysium that you can see in the sky, and it is this thing that's completely out of touch. Yep. And I thought just even the visuals on that were just so compelling of trying to express that distance that one can feel from
right,
when you're on the bottom end of a spectrum, like how impossible it is to reach.
Actually get there.
Which is crazy.
Yep.
Also, I will say I looked up flowers for Algernon and I was right.
Okay, good.
So
not hallucinating.
I'm like, oh my God. Also, and I'm like, I probably read this
Turing test, Sean.
My gosh. Well, I probably read this book in like 6th grade or something.
Right.
But it follows. So if anyone else is curious, it's a story about a kid named Charlie Gordon, or a man with an intellectual disability who undergoes an experimental surgery to increase his intelligence, mirroring the intelligence of a mouse named Algernon. And apparently, so he goes from, very, very low to incredibly brilliant, like beyond genius level. But of course, there's the ultimate cost for that experimentation. Which,
right.
I won't spoil anything, but the mouse dies. So read into that what you like. But again, another interesting thing of exploring those unintended consequences of what happens and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Right. How much time? Let's see. Do we have time for like one more?
We've got time, probably a couple
one or two more.
Yes.
Because there's so many good ones.
Choose your favorites.
Oh boy, there's some good ones.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with two more, and I'll list I'll put the whole list in the show notes. Also the links to, and you've written extensively about this, and you've done a podcast on these, right?
I have. Yeah. So actually, all of the book is available with me reading it on a podcast. Which
Fantastic.
Actually, nobody listens to.
Well, we'll put a
probably because it's me reading it, but also we can put a list a link up to the course website as well, because it's got a lot of additional information about the course, including a compilation soundtrack to go with the course.
Oh, that's rad. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of awesome movies in here, like Ghost in the Shell, Transcendence, The Man in the White Suit, Inferno, which I love. But the one I want to pick on two. And this one was embarrassing for me because I had always read this word and had never heard it said out loud.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm going to say?
I know exactly what you're going to say. Do you want me to say it for you?
No. I'll say it the way I'll say it the way that I thought it was.
Right.
And I hope, I hope everyone can appreciate this. And everyone I know you listening, you have those words too, where you only have ever seen it written. You never heard it.
No, I'm exactly the same. Yes.
So tell me about the movie Ex Machina.
Ex Machina, yes. Otherwise known as Ex Machina. Yes.
Which I was like, there's no way it's called that. When I heard someone say that, I was like, you fool.
Yes.
And I was like, oh no, it's me. I'm the fool.
No, I'm exactly the same. I read so much that I know the form of a word in front of me. I have no idea how to say half these things. So this, this movie is deep for you. I know that. I know. In a suite of movies where I love everyone, Ex Machina is special on so many fronts.
Yeah.
And even though, when was it? It was
2014.
2014. Right? So it is old now. And of course, it's a movie that dives deep into the nature of artificial intelligence and sort of being and being human and a whole bunch of other things. It is such a powerful movie on multiple fronts. First of all, that the ideas that it explores are deep. And there was there was sort of expert input into this in terms of sort of developing the ideas there. So it's not surprising that it's deep. It raises really challenging questions about the nature of artificial intelligence and some of the potential threats. And one of the things that I pull out is this idea that forget about AGI, but think about an AI that understands intimately our own sort of human cognitive biases and heuristics and works out how to use those as levers to achieve certain goals. Because an AI can do this. And because we are flawed biological individuals. And so it explores this idea of what happens when an AI gets to know us well enough that it can work out how to manipulate us to achieve the goals that it set itself. And the movie does that perfectly. But the other thing I would say is if you want to see a well-crafted movie where every single thing you see on the screen, every single thing you hear contributes to the story. Yeah. This is it. This is beautifully tight movie making.
I would agree. I would say that Ex Machina.
Yes.
I would say, I would put it up there. This is a contemporary masterpiece in terms, directed by Alex Garland. I guess the release date was April, according to Wikipedia, the release date was April 24th, 2015. So it's even old. So but this is one of those films where I also the acting in there is so well executed that the subtlest, the silence, the subtlest looks, and of course, some of the premise, right, is like somebody gets to visit this incredibly successful billionaire, genius, tech roboticist, company guy in this remote, exclusive, fancy, wealthy like house.
Yep.
But then it's like things aren't as they seem, and it just starts to get, and it's eerie, and it's
clever.
It's clever, and there's some of those scenes with the AI, the robot, which are just like, they're just incredible.
Yes.
Yep.
So just to show how obsessive I am with this movie, a little over a year ago, my wife and I went to stay in the hotel in Norway where it was filmed. And we got to stay in the same room that opens the movie in this sort of remote place.
I saw you shared pictures from that.
I know, cool. and got to talk to the hotel owner about sort of the filming and the fact that they actually had the Norwegian premiere at the hotel.
Oh, no way. Oh, that's really cool.
Yes.
I mean, I guess why not, right? When you're like, filmed here, everyone. No, I mean, it's incredible. And I mean, again, just going back, the film is... It's unsettling. It's deep. It's one of those films you can watch over and over again.
Yes.
And you'll pick up more the second time, the third time, because
the 8th, 10th, 20th time.
Because it's one of those classic things where you're looking at this thing that you're definitely meant to look at. And we can only pay attention to so many things. And then later you start picking up all these little, once you've seen it and you understand some things, you're allowed to wander a little bit more and you start picking up on these little subtleties that are there that you didn't see the first time.
Yep. And I would say this is a movie where every time we showed in class, one of my students comes up with a new insight that I hadn't thought of before with it.
No, it's fantastic. And I love it. I mean, I think the warning on there is very apt in the sense that, we're seeing, even with like large language model stuff, we're seeing already some of these, in some cases, very tragic situations because, again, we are very easily manipulated by the medium, right?
Yep.
And so whether it be a human on the other end or an artificial platform or whatever, that knows what levers to pull and push, you can manipulate all kinds of stuff.
And actually, just another quick digression. Just this last few days, Mustafa Suleyman from Microsoft wrote a piece about seemingly conscious AI and calls it SCAI and warns about the dangers of AI that is not conscious, but because we think that it is, it's able to affect us in certain very, very specific ways. And there are definitely resonances of Ex Machina here.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
also it gets directly back to that question about sort of the medium. And it's how we perceive things, how we react to sort of what we receive and how we receive it.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, absolutely. It's incredible. And and that comes back also to, you've heard on this podcast, certainly, is this idea of the danger of the myth, right? The thing itself may not have any agency or intelligence.
It's the power that we give it.
If we ascribe then we are giving it far more, and that's the danger, is then you start becoming, there's this term that kind of floats about where you just said the machine said no. Right. Which is like, well, the computer said no, there's nothing I can do because I've given it this unwarranted level of authority and, whatever, right? We've given over to it that this technology is better because it exists, not because it actually.
And so this is probably a little spoiler because I'm sure we'll come back to this and I'll write about it. But when we talk about agentic AI, the thing we should be talking about is the agency we give away from ourselves to the machine.
Absolutely. Because, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's, we'll see. Well, we can bash on
right, yes. I was like, for another time.
I feel like we need like a agentic AI stick where we're just like bad agentic AI.
Right.
All right. The last one I have to pick on this. This one, I think out of all the films on this list, this one for me might be besides Jurassic Park, this one might be the one that I might love the most. Also because of the book is Contact.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
so funny story with Contact. When I finished the final draft of the book and sent it to my publishers, they obviously got back to me with notes. And one of the notes was, we don't understand why Contact is in here. We suggest you might want to remove it. And I basically said, over my dead body.
Them's fighting words,
and
pal.
I'm not quite sure why. I think they thought that it was maybe too fantastical. What they didn't get is Contact is so deep. Written obviously by Carl Sagan. It captures his ethos, his soul, his vision. And yes, it goes into sci-fi fantasy with aliens, but it does it in such a grounded way.
It's so sharp. So as typical with these things, let's see, how old was I? 97. Trying to think how old I was in 97.
You're out of diapers by then.
I'm like, what? Yes, but not by much. You know, I mean, 90s. How old was I? I was like 14,
okay,
16,
yes,
something like that.
Yeah.
I was 16. So I saw the movie before I ever read the book.
Right. Yes.
In the movie, you know,
maybe it's great.
The movie doesn't
blows
want
you away.
the book is. I mean, the book that's on my shelf is a tattered, bent, creased old paperback, and I love it.
Yeah.
The audiobook also really great. But the film standalone from that does a great job of conveying, which when you only have a runtime of 140 minutes or something like that, you know what I mean. It does the best it can in that space. Yeah. But I still remember, and I won't spoil it. The outrage, right, of these foolish, sort of naive humans being like, well, yep, nothing to see here, and I'm like, oh, they're like, oh, you know,
and I've got to say, this is a controversial movie in the class.
Yeah.
Because
interesting. Why?
Well, first of all, it's long, and there are some students that think this is too long. It has a love story in, and the number of students who I think, I hated that because it's all about lovey-dovey stuff.
Isn't it Matthew McConaughey too?
It is, yes, and Jodie Foster. There are only two people in this class that appear in more than one movie. Jodie Foster is one of them because I just love Jodie Foster movies. But yes, they don't like it because it's a movie with sort of a love interest in it. It's a deep and complex movie as well. And I think that puts a number of people off. And actually, if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, last time I looked, I think it was only about 60% in terms of its rating.
Yeah, 69.
But the thing that gets me is, and I talk about this movie as being a love letter to science.
Yes.
Not the science in terms of the scientific method that you might learn at school, but the deep sort of emotional soul of science, what it means to be curious about things, and what it means to sort of put together a priori assumptions and ask big questions, even questions around the nature of belief and science. And this is actually what we teach in class, that this is a movie that takes two polar opposite seemingly views. One is the rational scientific view of the world, and one is the belief-driven view of the world, and how those both come together. And at the end, you realize there's actually very little difference between them.
And that was such a beautiful, well-done part of the movie. It's like the hearing, I think they set it up, where they're literally asking the scientists about her beliefs in God.
That's
right?
Exactly it.
And when I remember watching that and being like, it doesn't matter.
Right, yes.
Like, what are we doing? But that was this whole piece. But then also the other piece that I love, and again, for people who are totally unfamiliar with this story, it takes place, and it mimics a real moment in SETI's history.
The grounding in SETI, and Jodie Foster's character is actually based on a real person.
And I forget there's a name, because I know that so the event that happened was essentially, so SETI is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It's these massive array of radio telescopes that are scanning.
It's the New Mexico Very Large Array. But also it starts off with the Arecibo dish, which is now very sadly
defunct,
collapsed.
right?
I show pictures of this. It is like so devastatingly sad.
And that was that huge one. It was it's in South America, but where was it? Do you remember?
I want to say Costa Rica, but I always get this wrong. I should know. I've been teaching this for so many years.
It's so hard. I've even played video games where you literally drive around on top of this thing. I can't remember where it is. But yeah, it was this. It was a radio dish so large that it basically they built it into the ground essentially because it was like I don't even know how many football fields and but I mean massive.
It's big.
But and so there was a radio event where they captured this incredible signal, and I think they call it the WOW, right? Don't they? Because it was like originally circled in red with on pen, someone who wrote WOW because it was so that it was this first, and it turned out. I mean, I don't know if we ever discovered the true origins, but it was revealed not to be of extraterrestrial origin. But it was the first signal that stood out so strongly against the background that it went around the community of like, we need to check this out. This could be a signal. And that's kind of like the premise was, but in this version, it is a signal.
Yes, that's right. Yes. And it builds up on that.
And it builds. And one of the things that I absolutely love about that story as well is this juxtaposition of if we were to find contact, right?
Right.
And they give you something, the human hubris to be like, no, we're going to build it this way because our engineers can't understand this other method. And then things don't work right. And you're like, that's because you didn't. Yeah. Oh, it's just, it
is so good. And
it's so layered.
I've got to say that there is one scene in there, and it's the scene where Jodie Foster first hears this signal.
Oh yeah. Chills.
And if you want to watch something that gets to the visceral soul of being a scientist, that is the scene.
Yep.
Because the level of just excitement and awe and amazement and urgency maybe I'm alone here, but speaking as a scientist,
it gave me chills.
Yes.
It gives. I just thinking about it. Yes. I'm like, I'm gonna go watch this on my Vision Pro.
right. Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
and the other thing I've got to say, we were talking earlier about sort of tearing up in movie theaters. This film, and this did not expect me. I didn't expect this, but at the end of the film, because it basically was released after Carl Sagan had died of cancer, and at the end it just has this single sort of line on the screen saying "For Carl."
Yeah.
And I even talking about it now, I can feel myself tearing up, which is ridiculous.
No, but it's and again, if you've seen the film or you go watch it, the film is great. Read the book or grab it on audio. However you consume books, whether that if you read it or you're more like me and you want to listen to it. The audiobook version, I remember it being fantastic as well. And it's just it is so awesome.
And it is clever. Clever at a level that I have never read before.
It's not just for science geeks. It's not for people it's not for alien geeks. It's not for science geeks. I mean, trust me, those people will get plenty out of it.
Right.
But I mean, it is written also, again, I think, to his legacy. One of the things I think, he's done a lot of work over his, throughout his career and his legacy of bringing this ideas and these conversations to the public.
Yes.
I think Contact was, it's a chef's kiss on being able to do that.
Agree, yes.
Because it's a story that you can pick up just as a story. You can come to it with nothing and walk away going, wow, this changes. It literally has an effect. It is such a beautiful story. In any format you can see it, whether you watch it, read it, or listen to it. It's just absolutely tremendous. Yeah, well.
So we should probably wrap up.
Yeah, yes. Wow. Like I said, I'm just that's enough work for today. Let's go.
Well, actually, before we wrap up, can I just put one other 30-second thing in, which I'm really quite proud of?
Yes, let's do it.
So one of the movies we didn't mention, which is Dan Brown's Inferno, which is basically just a romp. What I am very proud of with that, this was before COVID, before anybody had even heard of COVID, 2018. And in the book, I talk about two things. I talk about global pandemics and gain-of-function research, and talk about sort of how these things are two things that are potentially going to come together at some point and produce really quite a challenging situation through science and through the nature of biology.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that even as we go through this in class, I'm talking about a hypothetical that just a couple of years later came to fruition.
Yeah. No, and I remember that being I was trying to look up the byline on it so I could read it and not give any spoilers. But yeah, it's wow. Yeah, it's just incredible. I'm trying to figure out how to set it up without spoiling. But I mean, what's terrifying? So in a very typical, if you're fans of the Dan Brown Robert Langdon series, so with like the Da Vinci Code. Where is Inferno in the origin of is it the second one?
Oh no,
third one?
It's at third.
Because it's like Angel.
Angels and Demons comes first, I think. Then we may be hallucinating. No, it's Da Vinci Code sort of comes possibly second, and Inferno somewhere down the line.
I should have a list of this. I should have looked this up. But in very typical Robert Langdon fashion, it's this chase of like learning something, then it's like, oh no, now we need to go there, run. Now we need, and it's this, which is they're so fun to read. I really enjoy those books. Yes. Oh yeah, it says right here, number 4. Robert Langdon, number 4.
Okay, yes. This is definitely the anti-intellectual podcast.
But you know what? But though, I don't want to go to dinner with somebody who would, I know. Yes. There's always, that's that thing. It's like the dinner test, right? It's like, if I'm going to work with you, we need to know, I don't want to write a paper or something. I don't want to get into that work if I don't want to go to dinner with the person. You know what I mean? But this book is really fun, but it's terrifying because of the way these things come together and the realization, like once this thing gets in there, it's gone. That's it. Game over. And then
another one actually where the book is better than the movie.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think, I think Jurassic Park is the only one that could truly hold its own as a completely independent thing that can have in its own sphere of film versus book, have the same kind of level of amazing. I don't know. Cause it's always that case. Always go read the book.
I know. Yep.
Or listen to it.
Anyway, I sidetracked us. We were trying to wrap this podcast
you know
up.
what? That's okay. Who doesn't love a good rabbit hole down another Dan Brown book? That's fantastic. Robert Langdon, the professor we all want to be, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's it.
Okay. No, I throw in one additional
Indiana
snippet,
Jones,
and then we have
Robert
absolutely
Langdon's
got to wrap up.
Yeah.
Again, Inferno, it's a light watch, but there is a point in there where the evil protagonist is giving the equivalent of a TED Talk. And, both that, but also this actually goes back to the Da Vinci Code as well, where Robert Langdon is giving a talk. Both of those have inspired me with my own lectures.
Interesting.
Because there is something about a movie lecture where you are on point, the slides are right, the narrative is right,
a team of people wrote it for you.
Maybe, I know.
See, it's like we've got Indiana Jones, we've got Robert Langdon. Yeah. I'm like, my question is when someone going to write a story about a couple of badass podcasting faculty?
Yes.
When do we get our story?
We're here to consult.
That's right. We're ready, With
that.
That's right. But no, that's fantastic. What a fun episode too.
Yep.
And like I said, so we'll put the links to all the crazy, because the nice thing about this book is that you wrote it. And so you can also share all the stuff, because you've done a tremendous job also of creating derivative pieces out of this, the podcast, the narrative part, all the stuff with the course. And of course, there's a ton of that so people can get it and go dive through these.
Yes.
Because maybe you're interested in one of these. Maybe you want to look at them as a collective thing or work your way through them. Or likewise, I mean, I look at this too, and a lot of these are based on books, great for book clubs, all this kind of stuff. Because they are conversation starters. I mean, these are things you can sit around and chew on these things for days, which makes them so much fun. But yeah, we'll close the book here, I think, and
nicely done.
Fantastic. Well, Andrew, thank you so much. I'll treasure and treat as always. So
no, this has been great, Sean.
So like I said, I'll stuff everything I can in the show notes. And we appreciate the continued support of our listeners for helping us climb those charts, which is fantastic. So, again, if you are enjoying what we're doing here on Modem Futura, please share and leave us a rating or review. It would go a long way of helping these machine-based algorithms help other people discover and find our shows. So be much appreciated. And well, thank you. And we'll see everybody on the next episode of Modem Futura.
We'll see you then.
End transmission.